Welcome back. The Colonial Pipeline is planning to restart operations after it had paused for more than 5 days after last Friday's ransomware attack. Now, that pipeline is responsible for delivering up to nearly half of the fuel needs of the southeast United States. And we've seen long lines at the pump of drivers looking to fill up their tanks. Now we're learning the fallout from the shutdown could take several days to fully recover. We've also seen states of emergencies be declared in several states in the South as well. Joining us to discuss, Marcy McCarthy, the DeKalb GOP chairwoman and CEO of TEN Cybersecurity Company. Marcy, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to see you and good to hear your interpretation of what's going on, because I want to start by sharing what the New York Times initially reported on Tuesday, saying that there was no long lines or major price hikes for gas. That's according to what their own reporting was. Again, sort of the initial shutdown of the pipeline, this ransomware attack. But I saw videos posted online, social media showing those long lines the same time the article came out. Tell me what you're seeing in the South right now.
Well, we're absolutely seeing a gas shortage and some panic buying going on. I checked this morning, and GasBuddy is reporting in the metro area that 70% of the gas stations are without gas, and those that are with gas are starting to price gouge. We're also seeing a lot of Atlantans rush to the tanks with insufficient devices or containers to gouge that gas.
Yeah, and that's concerning. I want to get to that in a moment. But first, let's listen to some remarks by Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg talking about gas hoarding and hikes. Take a look at this.
I will say that this is a time to be sensible and to be safe. Of course, we understand the concern in areas where people are encountering temporary supply disruptions. But hoarding does not make things better. And under no circumstances should gasoline ever be put into anything but a vehicle directly or an approved container.
Your thoughts on that remark? Is that important that people take that message to heart?
Well, gas is a very flammable liquid. You instantly can combust. So putting it in an insufficient container, like a plastic bag or a container store container or a to-go box, things like that is completely astounding to me that someone would put their lives at risk just to have gas accessible to them. Gas belongs in the car or in a jerry can, and it's amazing to even have this conversation, but we absolutely have to be safe. Gas is a very flammable fluid. I mean, there's signage when you go to the gas station, for God's sakes, not even to use your cell phone or even, light a cigarette or any kind of flammable device.
Yeah, these are some pretty common tips that we're discussing on the show. Always, of course, a good reminder. But we mention it because, as you said, that there were some reports of people who had been putting gas in plastic bags. Again, sort of just, you've got people who are very concerned, and you see these signs of no more gas at the gas station or these super long lines, and they're telling people, again, from the Biden administration and officials, a reminder there, don't fill plastic bags with gas, but also do not stock up overwhelmingly so. Also want to talk to you about the state of security, cybersecurity, when it comes to these pipeline companies who are being hacked. Talk to me about it. Is there some steps that should be taken to prevent a ransomware attack like this from happening again?
Well, I think there's first a lot of confusion between a hack and a ransomware type of attack. First and foremost is an understanding that ransomware is holding your information and your infrastructure hostage for an actual ransom. So the hacker itself is not going inside and exfiltrating data per se. They're holding it so you, as the organization, can't get to your information, and you have to pay a ransom, usually in Bitcoin, to retrieve that information. There's many things that can be done to protect your organizations. One, and first and foremost, is to have a backup and redundancy and disaster recovery plan. The information in your infrastructure is being held hostage in many instances and at risk to ransomware type of hackers is because you might not have a full ability to go in a alternate setting to bring your systems back up. In the case here with the Colonial Pipeline hack, you have potentially, at a proactive basis, they shut everything down because they didn't necessarily know what was being compromised And that is what's slowing the pipeline and actually closed the pipeline down in the supply chain of getting fuel out to the different gas stations.
Yeah. Again, we learned at this point that they will begin restarting their operations. Could take several days to get back to normal. We've heard from states governors, Governor of North Carolina, telling people just stay at home at this point. Don't rush to the gas stations if you don't have to. That's Marcy McCarthy joining us live on the program. We appreciate it, Marcy. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me today.
You got it.
Next, President Biden is confronted by reporters in a rare outing and once again tells them he cannot answer their questions. We'll play you the full exchange next.
Well, it is rare when President Biden faces off with reporters, but when he does, he always seems to say it gets him into trouble.
Yeah, yesterday, reporters tried to get Biden to weigh in on the many ongoing crises happening right now. Here's what happened.
Thank you.
What's your take on the end of your meeting, sir? Were you optimistic coming out of it today?
Which one of the 12 I've had?
Pelosi, Schumer, and the crew.
Infrastructure, sir, and in particular...
You guys are bad. I'm not supposed to be answering all these questions. I'm supposed to leave, but I can't resist your questions.
A chummy moment that many critics on arguably the right side would say that you've got a crisis with the economy, a low jobs report that you weren't expecting. You've got an immigration crisis at the border, the highest number you've seen in 20 years. You've got a Middle East conflict with one of your allies being fired upon constantly. And so much more. I feel like I'm leaving other things out. And this
gas
is
prices.
Gas
You've
prices,
got gas
colonial,
shortages right now.
Yeah.
Talking about people who have help wanted signs in their windows, and you're paying these unemployment benefits for a while, leading to future inflation concerns. I mean, the list goes on, and I'm sure that I'll give those reporters in the room the benefit of the doubt. I'm sure they were wanting to ask those questions and get the president's response. It's just every time you can tell that someone is telling him, don't answer questions because we don't want you going off script. And someone is telling that to the President of the United States, the Commander-in-Chief.
Yeah, not a time for a chummy moment, and I think that's where we are today. Do you realize what's happening with this country, what's happening in the world, the responsibility that we have here? You know, I think back to Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York during the pandemic. He had a press conference every single day. Then he fielded questions. Again, on a pandemic, one crisis. You have crises happening right now. If a governor can do it, you want to see the president of the United States, who won the most votes in American history. They want to hear from him. How are we handling this?
Yeah, you don't just want to hear from the press secretary who's going to deflect it to a different organization. You want to hear from the president himself, and you definitely want to feel as though your president could be able to answer your questions if given the chance. All right, still ahead, we're going to keep asking questions, especially this about the CDC now under fire, even CNN calling them out for being too cautious with their guidance. We'll play you a full exchange and ask our doctor whether he agrees. Coming up next. The CDC was fielding questions over whether the agency was being too cautious about its mask guidelines. Listen to this.
We need to follow the science, which is emerging every single day with regard to variants, with regard to transmissibility, with regard to protection. And then we need to follow our case rates to watch people get vaccinated, see how many people are getting vaccinated. Our job is to protect not just individuals. Our job is to protect populations, as we had high levels of cases, which are now coming down. And our job really is to find the sweet spot at the intersection of all of those. And I'm really looking forward to updating our guidance very soon.
Joining us to discuss, Dr. Evan Levine, a cardiologist and author of this book on your screen here, What Your Doctor Can't or Won't Tell You. He joins us now live on the program. Dr. Levine, thanks for coming on today. What do you make of Dr. Walensky's comments there made on CNN?
Well, what does very soon mean? Why can't we hear about this now? What I'm concerned about is just these mixed messages we continue to get. You know, I live in the Connecticut, New York area. I see people jogging, walking dogs in rural environments wearing masks. People in cars with no one else in the car wearing a mask. There's tremendous confusion, and I don't think the CDC is helping us. I don't think the politicians are helping us. I see Chris Cuomo, who can get a vaccine anytime his brother wants him to get a vaccine. I see Nancy Pelosi when she wants to get her hair dyed. She can go to a salon that's closed. I see Governor Newsom sitting in the French Laundry, which you and I could never even get into when it wasn't a pandemic, sitting in the French Laundry. So I see a tremendous amount of confusion. It's up to the CDC and people like Rochelle Walensky to give us really specific guidance. Why can't we go outside and not wear masks? I don't know. I'm vaccinated. I feel very comfortable going outside wearing a mask. You know, in New York, things are just feeling so terribly bad.
Yeah.
But when I vacationed in Florida and sat outside, it was uplifting for me to see people walking around without masks.
It totally makes a difference where you are. I'm also in New York City, and as you say, people wear masks when they're outside and more than 6 feet apart from one another. Even in Central Park, sometimes you see joggers, as you say, they're running with face masks on, which makes you wonder, that's got to be pretty uncomfortable. But perhaps they are looking for CDC guidelines, and I want to show you some. CDC released new guidelines last month for mask wearing, and announced that less than 10% of COVID-19 transmission was happening outdoors. But the New York Times, they published a report that suggested the agency based its guidance on misleading numbers, saying in part, quote, it appears to be based partly on a misclassification of some COVID transmission that actually took place in enclosed spaces. An even bigger issue is the extreme caution of CDC officials who picked a benchmark, 10%, so high that nobody could reasonably dispute it. The article going on to say that saying that less than 10% of COVID transmission occurs outdoors is akin to saying that sharks attack fewer than 20,000 swimmers a year there. Of course, it's not true, but it's both true but deceiving as well. You know, this information coming out, it leads, as you're saying, you know, Americans to have less trust in these institutions who are supposed to be the top of their fields, these best medical experts. I'm sure you could understand where there could be some questions coming out from your everyday Americans.
No, I read the New York Times article as well. And again, I feel comfortable going outside. I'm vaccinated without a mask. And for my mental health and everyone else's mental health, I don't need someone to tell me that I must wear a mask in those outside situations. And what bothered me is what Rochelle Walensky mentioned, coming soon. What does that mean, coming soon? Let's hear that we don't need to wear the masks going outside. Let's encourage people to get vaccinated. Okay, let's make guidelines for people who are vaccinated and perhaps not vaccinated. But I need specific guidelines. You know, even when you go to the airport, I mean, they make you stay a certain amount of feet away from everyone, waiting to get on the plane, and then they pack you in like sardines. These things lead to tremendous confusion for me.
Yeah.
But again, we need to worry about our mental health, and we need to, you know, get outside, not wear a mask, especially if you're vaccinated, and get specific guidelines, not only from the CDC, but also from our politicians as well.
Yeah, really quick for you, Doctor. You know, we talk about mask wearing outside, and of course you're a fan of being fully vaccinated and not needing to wear the mask outside. But when it comes to indoor transportation, ways of commuting, flying on planes, traveling on the subway, do you think that will continue on wearing masks even if everyone in the car or train or flight is fully vaccinated?
Really difficult. So if I had what I really wanted is that if you're fully vaccinated, you can get on the plane. If you're not vaccinated, well, then maybe you have to wear a mask or not get on the plane. A 2-hour flight is easy. More than a 2-hour flight, you know, you have to eat, you take your mask off. Again, they say they have HEPA filters. I don't know what that means. If someone's sitting next to you and coughs, is the cough supposed to be taken up by the HEPA filter and then filtered before it gets to you? Ridiculous. You know, it's false hope. So as far as planes I love to go on cruises. I think if you want to go on a plane and you want to go on a cruise, I'm sorry. I think you should be vaccinated and have proof of vaccination. Okay.
All right. Well, we, of course, will wait and see for official CDC guidance. Who knows when that will come in. We'll keep watching and then have to invite you back for your analysis of it when it comes out. That's Dr. Evan Levine joining us live. Doctor, thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
All right, time now for the Newsmax News Minute. You know who's here. It's Rachel Roller. Hey, Rachel.
Good morning, Sean. Let's take a look at some of those other stories making headlines today. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says he doesn't think anybody is questioning the legitimacy of the presidential election after meeting with President Biden, adding that he thinks the election is, quote, all over with. Now, McCarthy's comments follow the vote to remove Representative Liz Cheney from her leadership position after she publicly criticized former President Trump's handling of the 2020 election. Also, U.S. airlines canceling flights bound for Tel Aviv as violence escalates between Israel and the Palestinian militant group Hamas. So far, Delta, United, and American Airlines have all announced cancellations and are actually handing out travel vouchers. The U.S. has condemned the violence in the region and is dispatching diplomats in an attempt to de-escalate the tensions there. More than 130 U.S. personnel have reportedly been affected by the Havana syndrome. Now, this is much more than the 21 previously reported. The increase is due to a more expanded review of the issue, which included Europe and Asia. Since last December, at least 3 CIA officers have experienced serious health issues from these attacks. Those are just some of the stories that we're following right now. If you're looking for breaking news, head to our website, newsmax.com. Sean?
Rachel, coming up, many in the media comparing Biden to former President Jimmy Carter over the current gas crisis, but now former President Trump is weighing in, and he says that that comparison is not fair to Jimmy Carter. President Trump's full statement now.